Edward had always been a man of routine. So when he landed a job as a security guard at the local department store, he embraced the monotony of the night shift with open arms. For the first few nights, everything went according to plan. He patrolled the aisles, checked the locks, and monitored the security cameras from the comfort of his office. But on the fourth night, Edward's sense of routine was shattered by a series of unsettling events. It started innocuously enough, with the lights in the corridor flickering intermittently. Edward dismissed it as a minor electrical glitch, a nuisance rather than a cause for concern. However, as the night wore on, the disturbances became increasingly bizarre. The fridges in the grocery section began shutting off inexplicably, causing the contents to spoil. Items on the shelves seemed to rearrange themselves when Edward wasn't looking, as if possessed by some unseen force. At first, Edward brushed off these occurrences as the product of his own tired mind playing tricks on him. He blamed it on the stress of the job and his own carelessness, refusing to entertain the notion that something more sinister might be at play. But then, on one fateful night, as he sat in his office sipping lukewarm tea, Edward noticed movement on one of the security cameras. His heart skipped a beat as he watched a shadowy figure darting between the aisles, moving with an unnatural grace. A chill ran down Edward's spine as he considered the possibility of an intruder lurking in the store after hours. He tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination running wild, or perhaps a homeless person seeking shelter from the cold. Summoning his courage, Edward grabbed his flashlight and ventured out into the deserted store, his footsteps echoing in the silence. As he rounded a corner, he caught a fleeting glimpse of something darting from shelf to shelf ahead of him, moving with lightning speed. "Who's there?" Edward called out, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and bravado. But instead of a response, the store was filled with a blood-curdling scream that seemed to reverberate through the walls, shaking Edward to his core. Without hesitation, Edward turned and fled, his heart pounding in his chest as he raced back to the safety of his office. He fumbled for the phone, his hands shaking as he dialed the number for the rapid response team, desperate for help. But before he could even speak to the operator, he heard a guttural growl emanating from the darkness behind him. Whirling around, Edward came face to face with a creature unlike anything he had ever seen before. It stood before him, its form twisted and contorted, its features obscured by shadows. Its skin was pale and clammy, its eyes nothing more than empty sockets, staring back at him with an otherworldly hunger. For a moment, Edward was paralyzed with fear, his mind struggling to comprehend the horror unfolding before him. But then, instinct kicked in, and he turned and bolted for the nearest exit, the creature hot on his heels. With a burst of adrenaline-fueled energy, Edward reached the safety of the store's walk-in refrigerator and slammed the heavy steel door shut behind him, praying that it would hold against the creature's onslaught. But the creature was relentless, pounding against the door with a force that threatened to tear it from its hinges. With each blow, the thick steel began to buckle and warp, inching ever closer to collapse. Just when it seemed that all hope was lost, there was a sudden cacophony of screams and gunfire from the other side of the door. Edward listened in stunned silence as the sounds of battle echoed through the store, filling him with a mixture of dread and relief. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the chaos subsided, leaving behind an eerie silence that hung heavy in the air. With trembling hands, Edward slowly opened the door and stepped out into the dimly lit store, unsure of what he would find on the other side. To his astonishment, he was greeted by a group of men dressed in black military uniforms, their faces obscured by masks and their weapons trained on him. Edward's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the situation, but before he could speak, the soldiers gestured for him to follow them. Wordlessly, they escorted him out of the store and into a waiting car, where a man with a folder in his hand awaited him. Without a word, the man thrust the folder into Edward's hands, his expression unreadable. Inside the folder was a document, its contents filled with ominous warnings and dire threats. Edward's hands shook as he read the words, realizing with a sinking feeling that he was being forced to sign away his freedom in exchange for silence. With a heavy heart, Edward resigned from his position at the department store the next day, haunted by the memories of that fateful night and the knowledge that some secrets were never meant to be revealed.